Have you ever heard the expression, I love you to death? Or do you think that maybe it's possible to not love someone? If you're falling in love with them, can you stop and say, wait a minute, I'm not going to fall in love with this person? Because if I do, maybe that would kill them. Well, that's what happens in this book, The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. This is a book about two sisters who are descendants of someone who was killed during the Salem witch trial. And they find out throughout the book that they actually are witches. They don't necessarily want to be witches. In fact, they were raised to fight against their supernatural powers because their parents want them to have a normal life. But as they become teenagers, they realize that they are, in fact, witches and they have power. Now, as the story then unfolds, they realize that if they fall in love with somebody, there's a curse on their family that anyone they fall in love with will die. So here's a passage from the book, The Rules of Magic. It's about the two sisters talking about their powers, and it's pretty early in the book. It's on page 35. They're talking about the ancestor that they have that died during the Salem witch trials, and they're looking at her picture. And one of the sisters says, don't you think I look like her? And that's Jet. And Jet's sister, Franny, replies, you don't want to look like her. Franny was quick to respond. She ended unhappily, trust me. She was miserable. She was accused of witchery. Jet sat beside her sister. I wonder if that would have happened to me if I was alive at the time. I can hear what people are thinking. You cannot, Franny said. And then, after a look at her sister, can you? It's not that I want to, Jet said. It just happens. Fine. What am I thinking right now? Franny, Jet demurred. Thoughts should be private things. I do my best not to listen in. Seriously, tell me, what am I thinking right now? Jet paused. She gathered her long black hair in one hand and pursed her lips. Since coming to Massachusetts, she had grown more beautiful each day. You're thinking we're not like other people. Well, I've always thought that, Franny laughed, relieved that that was all her sister had picked up. That's nothing new. But later, when Jet went out into the garden, she stood beneath the lilacs with their dusky, heart-shaped leaves. Everything smelled like mint and regret. I wish we were like other people. That was what Franny had been thinking. Oh, how I wish we could fall in love. So if you want to learn more about this story and how it ends, The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman is a book that I recommend. It's interesting because it references some characters from the Crucible and the Salem witch trial that occurred. And it also references some interesting parts of the history later on, since the book takes place in 1960s. Even though the ancestors are from the Salem witch trials, we see reference to that, but we also see reference to things like Woodstock. Characters in the book include Bob Dylan, for example, because the sister's brother is a musician. And so he plays the guitar and he gets to meet Bob Dylan. He references Jim Morrison. I think there's a passage where they're passing Jim Morrison's grave. So it was interesting in that aspect too. There were some good historical references as well. It's a fantasy book. It's outside of my typical genre, but I thought it was good to get out there and try something different, something outside of my comfort zone. And if that's something you're interested too, let me recommend The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman.